Welcome to Los Angeles, the city of angels and the demons. Here, where the glitz of Hollywood meets the shadows of mystery, every corner has a story to tell. Tonight, I'm going to share with you 3 true horror stories, lived by people who face the inexplicable in this very city. These are not just legends. They are authentic experiences that have left their protagonists marked forever. Be prepared to feel chills and not want to turn off the screen, because these stories are as real as the city we live in. From the most famous parks to the most hidden neighborhoods, Los Angeles hides secrets that only the bravest dare to discover. So turn off the lights, settle in, and get ready for a journey into the heart of fear. Because once you hear these stories, you may never look at Los Angeles the same way. Story 1. The Faceless Singer of Griffith Park. Told by Kagel Canyon, who worked at the Los Angeles Zoo approximately 5 years ago. I've always loved nature, which is why I decided to work at Griffith Park Zoo. It was a place where I could be close to the animals and enjoy the outdoors, but I never imagined that my work would lead me to a life-changing experience. Before working there, I had heard rumors about Griffith Park's dark history. It was said that the park was haunted, that the spirit of Don Antonio Feliz, who cursed the land before dying in 1863, still hovered around, causing misfortune to those who dared to disturb its rest. They spoke of shadows moving through the trees, of laughter echoing in the night without explanation, but I, being a practical person, never gave much importance to those legends. That is, until that night. It was a quiet night at the zoo. It was around 10 p.m., and the park was closed to the public. I, Kagel Canyon, was doing my usual rounds as part of my job at the zoo. The moon shone dimly through the clouds, casting long, shifting shadows between the trees and empty cages of the old zoo, which now served as a picnic area during the day. The air was cold and the silence was so deep that every step he took echoed in the darkness. As I walked along the main trail, I heard a strange sound. At first I thought it was the wind whispering through the branches, but then I realized it was a voice, a woman singing musical scales, as if she was preparing for a concert. The voice was clear and melodious, but there was something unsettling about it, something that didn't fit the stillness of the night. It was as if the music was imbued with an ancient sadness, a lament I couldn't comprehend. I stopped, trying to locate where the sound was coming from. It seemed to come from beyond the fence, on the outside of the zoo, near where the ruins of the old zoo stand like skeletons of a forgotten past. I decided to investigate, driven by a mixture of curiosity and a strange feeling that squeezed my chest. As I got closer to the fence, the voice grew louder, clearer, but also more oppressive, as if trying to envelop me. I reached the fence and looked the other way. There she was. A woman dressed in a yellow raincoat, standing in the moonlight. His figure was motionless, almost ethereal, and the raincoat seemed to glow. The glow that did not correspond to natural light. When I tried to focus on his face, I realized he didn't have any. Where his eyes, nose, and mouth should be, there was only a void, a total absence of features. It was as if his face were a blank canvas, without definition. An abyss that absorbed light and hope. I froze, unable to move or look away. She did not move. I was just there, singing those endless scales. His voice was hypnotic, but at the same time terrifying. I felt a chill run down my spine, and my heart began to pound, as if it wanted to escape from my chest. I tried to convince myself that it was a trick of the light, an illusion created by fatigue. But I couldn't deny what I saw. That faceless figure was there, real and tangible, and its presence filled the air with an energy that made me feel small and insignificant. Suddenly, without warning, she disappeared. One moment it was there, and the next, it had vanished into the night, as if it had never existed. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own heavy breathing. I stood there trembling, trying to process what I had just witnessed. My legs were barely responding, but I managed to take one step back, then another, until I finally ran back to the office, my heart racing 1,000 miles an hour. I didn't tell anyone what I'd seen. I was afraid that they would take me for crazy. But that night had changed me. Since then, every time I pass by the zoo, I can't help but look up at the fence, wondering if she's still there, waiting to be seen again. After that incident, I decided to quit my job at the zoo. I couldn't bear the thought of meeting that faceless figure again. I moved to another city, trying to leave that experience behind. But the memory is still alive in my memory. Since that night, I can't listen to a song without thinking about her, about that faceless voice that haunts me in my dreams. Summary with facts from true history. Coral Barrero shared this experience while working at the Los Angeles Zoo, located in Griffith Park about 5 years ago. Although this specific incident is not documented elsewhere, Griffith Park is known for its ghost stories. The now abandoned former Griffith Park Zoo has been the scene of numerous reports of paranormal activity, including ghostly animal sounds and visions of spirits. In addition, the legend of the curse of Don Antonio Feliz, who supposedly haunted the land before his death in 1863, adds an extra layer of mystery and fear to the area. These collective stories support Coral's experience, placing her within a larger context of unexplained phenomena in Griffith Park. Story 2. The Ghosts of Kagel Canyon. As told by Barry Reimer, who lived in Kagel Canyon, I've always been skeptical of the paranormal, but what I experienced in Kaggel Canyon made me rethink everything I thought I knew. I was never one of those who believe in ghosts or horror stories. For me, everything had a logical explanation. But that night, the logic faded, and what was left was pure fear. I had just moved into this old house in Kaggel Canyon. It was a secluded place, surrounded by hills and trees, perfect for enjoying the tranquility away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The house had a rustic feel, with worn wooden walls and a porch that creaked with every step. I fell in love with their isolation, with the idea of being alone with my thoughts. But I soon discovered that loneliness brought with it things I didn't expect. The house was old, with creaks and moans that he attributed to his age. For the first few nights, those sounds seemed normal to me. The wind blowing through the windows, the ground settling. But one night, everything changed. It was a particularly dark, moonless night, and the sky was covered with clouds that seemed to absorb any trace of light. I was lying in my bed, trying to fall asleep, when suddenly I heard a strange sound. Doorknob shaking, as if someone was trying to get in. I jumped up, my heart pounding, and went to check. I turned on my phone's flashlight and opened the front door, hoping to find an animal, or perhaps a lost neighbor, but no one was there. The outside was silent. Only the chirping of crickets broke the stillness. I checked the porch, the surroundings, but everything was in order. I told myself it must have been my imagination, and went back to bed, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then I saw him, a transparent, almost ethereal figure standing at the foot of my bed. It was tall, with diffuse outlines, as if it were made of fog. But she was not alone. Behind her, there were more, about 10 or 12 similar figures, all staring at me with empty eyes that seemed to pierce my soul. Some had human forms, others were more undefined, like shadows writhing in the gloom. They did not move, they were just there watching me. And a presence filled the room with a tightness that made it hard for me to breathe. I felt a strange smell like burnt phosphorus permeating the air. It was a chemical, almost supernatural stench that turned my stomach. I tried to move, scream, but my body was unresponsive. It was as if an invisible force kept me glued to the mattress, trapped under the gaze of those figures. My mind struggled to find an explanation. Was I dreaming? Was it a hallucination? But the clarity of what I saw, the intensity of the smell, told me that this was real. I don't know how long they were there. It could have been minutes or hours. Time seemed to have stopped. But eventually they began to fade, one by one, as if dissolving into thin air. The smell of phosphorus dissipated and the air was breathable again. I got out of bed shaking and turned on all the lights in the house. I couldn't sleep that night or many others after that. The next day, I decided to research the history of the house and the area. I spoke to some locals who told me that Kagel Canyon had been the scene of several bizarre incidents over the years, including disappearances and sightings of ghostly figures. Some believed that the area was haunted, that the hills held secrets of forgotten tragedies. I never found a concrete explanation, but those stories made me realize that I wasn't alone in my experience. After that night, I couldn't stay in that house for another minute. I packed up my things and moved in. I still don't know what I saw, but I know it was real and that it changed me forever. Although I've tried to forget, every time I close my eyes, I see their ethereal figures staring at me, and the smell of phosphorus assaults me again. Barry Reimer lived this experience in Kagel Canyon, a rural and isolated area on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Although there are no specific records of other ghost sightings in that exact location, Kaggel Canyon is known for its isolation and history, making it a conducive place for tales of the paranormal. Barry's account is consistent with other reports of supernatural activity in remote areas of Los Angeles, where the lack of human presence can make paranormal experiences more intense and terrifying. Story 3, Koreatown's Invisible Tenant. As told by Mark Roeder, who lived in an apartment in Koreatown more than 20 years ago. I've always liked living in old apartments. They have character and history. Its walls seem to whisper stories of those who lived there before, and that has always fascinated me. But in this case, the story was darker than I imagined, and what I experienced in that apartment made me question whether some stories should remain buried. I had moved into this old apartment in Koreatown. It had a vintage charm with its ornate moldings, wooden floors that creaked under my footsteps, and windows that let in the light of the neighborhood's neon lights. It was a place full of life, surrounded by restaurants and bustle. But within those four walls, something was not right. The first few weeks were normal, or so I thought. But then the strange incidents began. At night, I heard noises, slow, deliberate footsteps in the hallway, as if someone were walking back and forth. Whispers seemed to come from the walls, but that faded away when I tried to listen carefully. Doors that closed by themselves with a dry click. At first, I attributed it to the typical sounds of an old building, to the traffic of the city, to my imagination. But the noises became more frequent, more intense, and I soon knew I wasn't alone. One night, in bed, I felt the mattress sink in, as if someone had sat next to me. I turned around quickly, hoping to find an explanation, but no one was there. The room was empty, lit only by the dim light that filtered through the window. I tried to convince myself that it was a dream, but the feeling of weight on the bed was all too real. I got up, turned on the light and checked every corner of the apartment, but I found nothing. The incidents continued. One afternoon, while preparing dinner in the kitchen, I felt a strong push on my back, as if someone was trying to throw me to the ground. I turned around, the knife still in my hand, but no one was there. The air felt thick, charged with an energy that made my nerves stand on edge. I began to avoid being alone in the apartment, to leave the lights on even during the day. Another night, while watching television, I saw out of the corner of my eye a figure passing through the corridor. He was a young man with his head bowed, dressed in old worn-out clothes as if he belonged to another era. His presence was fleeting, but clear. When I turned to look directly at him, he was gone. I ran into the hallway, but no one was there. My heart was pounding, and for the first time, I felt real fear. Days later, I couldn't take it anymore and mentioned to my neighbor what was happening. She looked at me seriously, as if she knew something I didn't. He told me that the previous tenant had committed suicide in that same apartment. He had been a young man tormented by personal problems. Someone who fought against his demons until he couldn't take it anymore. His death had been tragic and sudden, and some neighbors said that his spirit never left the place. After that conversation, I couldn't stay another day. The thought of his spirit still haunting the apartment, watching me, touching me, was too much for me. I packed my things and moved in as quickly as I could, leaving the apartment and its secrets behind. I never went back to that building, but its shadow haunts me. Even today, when I pass through Koreatown, I can't help but think of that invisible presence, wondering if it still awaits the next tenant. And sometimes, on quiet nights, I think I hear footsteps in the hallway, reminding me that some ghosts never quite go away. After all these years, I can't walk through that building without feeling a chill, as if a part of me knows he's still there, waiting. Mark Roeder lived in an apartment in Koreatown, a neighborhood known for its history and cultural diversity. Although there are no specific records of this particular incident, it is common for older buildings in urban areas such as Koreatown to house stories of past tragedies, including suicides, which are often associated with paranormal phenomena. Mark's experience reflects these urban narratives about buildings with dark pasts where echoes of tragic events can linger in the form of supernatural presences.